Welcome in to the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of 97.9 ESPN Radio. Ira Schoffel to my left, the managing editor of Warchant.com. Of course, the founder, administrator of Warchant.com, Gene Williams, to my right. Florida State-Miami rivalry week, 8 p.m., not 8 p.m., 8 p.m., ABC, Hard Rock Stadium. Your details for the game. Of course, before we get to that, we have to go back and look at the game just played. Unfortunately, Florida State falls to North Carolina in dramatic fashion, and that has led to any number of talking points. Gene, I'll let you go wherever you'd like after that wonderful contest concluding as it did.
Well, there's so much you take from that game. I guess, first of all, I think the most telling thing is the defense. It's regressing. It's one of those things where is there a positive sign? Can you point to any positive sign you saw there? There really isn't. I mean, if anything, at least for a half against Ole Miss, you saw some signs of life. They played pretty well. It's going in the wrong directions there. You know, we had all those. This first game, they set a record for a decade, I think, in penalties. They did it again. They had 13 penalties in this last game. It's amazing that final drive, they were still able to go down despite 3 penalties on offense. The metrics say when you have that many penalties on offense, you're not going to drive down for a touchdown. They overcame that. But I will say on a positive, Jeff, the offense, I think we're starting to see some progression. The competition the last couple of weeks has been better, but the offensive line looks like they've got that starting 5 settled. I'm seeing a little bit more, especially on the right side. Looks like it's improving there. Dalvin Cook is back to being Dalvin Cook. That's a very good sign there. So, I mean, I think on one side of the ball, you're moving up, and the other side, not so much.
Yeah, it's all very ugly. Ira, what are the most telling signs that this thing is not going to get turned around this year on defense?
Well, just having watched them play 5 games, that's where I'm going to start. Look, man, it's a tough situation when you don't do anything really well. They don't get after the quarterback very well. They don't affect the quarterback. They don't stop the run very well. The kid from North Carolina, their backup tailback, ran for almost 8 yards a carry. They don't cover very well. They don't inflict punishment when you do catch the ball. There's not a lot of big hits. I mean, there's just nothing this defense can hang its hat on. And so, Miami's offense going into this game, and I know we'll preview it more later, Miami's offense may not be the greatest thing in the world, but the way this Florida State defense is playing right now, I don't know if it matters who they play against. I mean, Charleston Southern, only scored 8 points, but they moved the ball up, and they had about 300 yards of offense with half their team suspended. I just don't have any confidence in this defense doing anything or changing in the last 7 games.
And a big part of that is because, while you lack the confidence, so do they. They don't believe that they're going to make plays. They play on their heels. They don't play very aggressive and downhill. I think they're thinking an awful lot. I think that their confidence is shot. There's been nothing to buoy them at this point. And I'll be honest with you, you want to talk about damning, Gene, I guess I can open it up to the panel, but, I mean, were you actually surprised that North Carolina was able to get in field goal range in 19 seconds? Because I wasn't.
Well, I had the fear after the time. I go, 23 seconds for this defense, it's a lot of time. Any other year I would have.
Think about that, Gene.
Any other year I would be shocked.
23 seconds.
Any other year, that's done.
Worried.
The game is over. I'd probably said, there's probably about a 30% chance they could lose this game at that point. Usually it's probably a 90. And I guess what's really bothersome, if you go look at that last series, is just those last 3 plays and guys just running wide open. When all they can do is go vertical down the field. There's no other play options. Even the incompletion. I mean, you had the number 1 receiver in the ACC in terms of receptions, had, 13 receptions a game. He's running down the middle of the field wide open, 20 yards. I mean, how do you not cover that play? It's baffling to me. And probably if they would have caught that, they would end up scoring a touchdown instead of a field goal, I guess.
I think the weird thing about it all, and we could look at the yards per play metrics. I'm not even going to go through all these glaring stats. This is the worst defense in Florida State history. It's really not close. They're on pace to shatter records. They already have broken some of rather dubious records. They're at the bottom of the barrel, even in all the advanced metrics. You could look at yards per play. You could look at anything you want. I think what's appalling and what's difficult to kind of explain is how you could get here, how quickly this has happened. We're not that far removed from seeing a team win 29 straight games, win a national title. Even last year they were 10-3. They didn't play a lot of great offenses, but they were a far cry better than what we've seen this year. Are there signs anywhere that this is going to get better? Is there anything, signs of life that could be salvaged for this weekend? Anything?
I think the one nice thing about this game is that they are playing Miami. I think if they were not playing Miami this week, I think this would be a perfect opportunity for guys who want to start looking ahead to their NFL futures or looking ahead to the offseason. This would be a time to do it after that disappointing loss against North Carolina, because those guys were zombies coming off the field. They were devastated about the way they lost that game. I'm not sure they should have been, but they were. But going forward, you have a Miami game coming up. There's so many of these guys from South Florida. There's so many of these guys that know kids on the other team. You do have the 6-game winning streak against Miami. You have owned the state of Florida since Jimbo Fisher's been the head coach. So I think that gets them fired up for this game. But if they don't do well in this game, I think it spells really bad things for the future. The only other positive really right now is that you're going to get Derwin James back at some point at safety, which is a positive, not just because he's a good player, but because he's an emotional leader. And then there's a couple other guys that have been a little bit banged up. Maybe you get a little healthier, but no, there's nothing that's tangible.
And
so, long way of saying,
not really.
No, it's hard. And Jimbo talked when we talked to Jimbo Fisher on Monday.
Examples.
He gave examples of teams that have turned it around a little bit, but yeah, you don't see any signs.
None of them looked like this. You mentioned the offense getting going, and the offense is getting going, but they don't get off to good starts. I mean, another first quarter where they don't score against an impossibly bad defense in North Carolina, and they're down 21-0 before they know it. It can't all be on the feet of the defense, on the backs of the defense, although that is primarily the problem. The offense does rebound to come back and make a lot of plays and score a lot of points and amass a lot of yards, but they don't get off to fast starts either. Are there signs that they can carry the day in this game?
Well, I think this game and for the rest of the way, they're going to have to. I think, as Ira pointed out, there's no magic pill. There's nothing going to dramatically be turned around very quickly with the offense. You're going to have to win a lot of shootouts. But to your point, Jeff, I think that's a big key. If you can not just give up a quarter and a half where you just go, don't do anything. Imagine if they got off to a good start. They could put up 40, 50-plus points per game, and you may need to do that because we haven't seen a game where they've given up. I don't remember when's the last time. I guess last year's Florida game against an FBS team where they gave up less than 30 points in a game. So that means you're going to have to get 40 points a game probably to win games. So the good news is, like I said, they're looking better at all phases of the offense as long as DeAndre Francois stays healthy, and that's one thing that makes you nervous as much as he runs and takes a lot of punishment. As long as he stays healthy, I think this offense is capable of doing that.
One thing I'd like to see improve, and really that would have to happen for them to carry these games 50-40 every week, the receivers got to get open. We saw a ton of catches from tight ends and running backs. You don't see a lot of separation from receivers. You don't see a lot of big plays being made by receivers. Bobo some late.
Rudolph disappeared a little bit.
It kind of totally disappeared.
Yeah.
Dropped the touchdown. He did make a catch late in that game, but he's a guy that you've got to see more of. They're not consistently getting the ball to their wide receivers. When we come back, we'll take a look at the University of Miami, preview this game on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. Florida State and Miami. First of all, Miami undefeated. They've played virtually nobody up to this point, but they've done what good teams do when they play lesser tier teams. They've won those games. Mark Richt, the head coach, obviously first year down in Miami, taking over his old playing stomping days, alumni from Miami, and certainly he's got them on track. It would be big for him to be able to get a win in this rivalry, something Miami hasn't done in an awful long time. Jimbo Fisher talked about the University of Miami. Here he is.
Miami's a very good team. I don't know if they're top 10. They're undefeated, playing very well. They're 4-0. They're dynamic on offense. They have playmakers at receiver and quarterback and running back. Very physical. Defensively, Manny does a great job with the defense. Of course, Mark does with the offense. There are a lot of blitz packages, a lot of different looks, a lot of things they do. Be a home game. They have a great environment. Just more experience. He's a lot calmer, more poised. You can see the maturity in him as he keeps going. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's just growing as a player, very good player.
That's Jimbo Fisher talking about the University of Miami. Next opponent for Florida State. 9 returning starters on this offense. Most people obviously know Brad Kaya. He's putting up good numbers to start the year. He's a talented quarterback. Of course, Yearby and Walton, 2 guys right now. 13 touchdowns between these 2 individuals. And, of course, Stacy Coley, a senior wide receiver. So they've got weapons. They utilize those weapons well. Again, they haven't faced much in the way of competition. Ira, what is it that you see from Brad Kaya? We've all seen him a ton. That you think he does well that will be most problematic for Florida State?
Well, I think the big thing about Brad Kaya and talking to Florida State's coach Jimbo Fisher and Florida State's players through the last couple of years of facing him is the big thing. The number one thing you have to do against him is get him off his spot. He's a very accurate passer if he can sit in the pocket and get some time to really see what he wants to do. He's not quite as accurate when he has to move or he's got pressure coming in his face. Florida State, and I think that's going to be the problem for Florida State in this game, is in the last 2 seasons, Florida State had Derwin James or Jalen Ramsey to get a lot of pressure on him, to flush him off his spot, not necessarily get a sack, not necessarily force him to run, but just get him off his spot and make him throw while on the run. He's not as accurate in that situation. Florida State has not shown the ability to do that to opposing quarterbacks this season. If they can't do that, Brad Kaaya can be extremely accurate. He threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last year against FSU. I mean, he could have a huge game if they can't affect him.
You know, it's funny, Gene, too. We talk about so much the back end of this defense, and we're seeing the horrific ends of plays, if you will. But part of that is the fact that they don't get any other pressure on the quarterback, and he has weapons. Talk about other aspects of this Miami offense that could hurt Florida State.
Yeah, he does. You mentioned the 2 running backs. What's interesting here about, Yearby and Walton is they're, like you said, they're running through the walls right now, over 7 yards per carry. But Miami was 112th in rushing offense last year. They're 13th now. Have they really improved that much, or is this a function of some really awful competition? Not that it's going to get a whole lot better this Saturday per se, but I mean, they've got a couple guys that look like good running backs right now. So it's a diversified thing. Stacy Coley, we know about him. He's been there, it seems like, for 20 years. He's there, and he's their top receiver. But watch out for Amon Richards. This is their big play guy. He's averaging over 20 yards a catch right now. So he does have some weapons around him. If they get that running game going to go along, we know how good Brad Kaaya is. It's going to be a long day for FSU's defense.
Statistically speaking, you look at all the things Miami's done, and it would not bode well for Florida State's defense. But yet at the same time, how much? I mean, you can't really know just how good this unit is, and that's, again, is something you hang your hat on and hope for. But this defense has been playing the shell of itself.
Yeah, and the challenge for Florida State is if Miami gets that running game going, which they've shown they can do, and there's a commitment to do with Mark Richt, you get so susceptible to play action, and this defense has really struggled with play action. The linebackers and even the defensive backs have really struggled with play action. And so if Miami gets that running game going early, you have to think FSU is going to be in trouble.
Now, defensively, Miami only returns 4 starters, and they got the 3 freshmen at linebackers. And I know the numbers look good again, but when you're talking about playing the competition they have, the statistics are going to be very misleading. I am curious that they're holding people to a very low number in yards per play and all that stuff. But I think Florida State can take advantage of this group. FSU has averaged 33.5 points a game versus Miami under Jimbo Fisher. He's had a good game plan every time they've faced Miami offensively. I'm not so sure that what Miami's done to this point is any reason to believe that they're that much better on defense. Talk about what you think you'll see from Fisher in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think FSU's offense will have an advantage against Miami's defense, no question. But it is going to be a little bit different. Miami's new defensive coordinator, Manny Diaz, is going to be a little bit more attacking. I think the feeling for Miami fans was that Coach D'Onofrio, their former defensive coordinator, was very tentative, very just not attacking the way very reactionary, not the way Manny Diaz. And we know historically Miami always played a lot of cover 2, and Jimbo would just tear that apart with passes over the middle, get the tight ends, then start getting the safeties cheating up. This, it's going to be a different kind of defense. I think this is because this is the first great offense I think Miami's going to face. This is going to be the first chance to really see what Miami's defense is all about. It's going to be a good test for both sides, but you would have to give the edge to Florida State.
Well, and you would hope certainly that it's a situation where, because they haven't had the speed or seen the speed that Florida State will bring to the table, that they could be a little shell-shocked early. And if it gets to be a score fest, can you get it into the second half and make it interesting and get them thinking about how long it's been since they've beaten Florida State, somewhere around the Carter administration. So, again, you can't really judge. What do you think? I know that ranking top 10 right about now in defense, Gene. What do you seen from their defense?
Well, as Ira said, they've played a light schedule. We really don't know a whole lot about this. They only returned 4 starters, and really people didn't think they were going to be that good preseason. We really don't know. Let me go through a couple things for you guys. In their schedule, their first 4 games, Florida A&M, we know, down the street here. For FCS, they got the number 112th offense in FCS. So they started out with them. Then they played Florida Atlantic, number 118 in FBS. Appalachian State all the way up at 89 in total offense, and then Georgia Tech at 113 in total offense. So they played absolutely nobody who can do anything on offense. And I think this is a game, definitely, you look at that, you look at the amount of guys they've lost. They've got some real issues on the interior of the defensive line. You mentioned the linebackers, Jeff, starting all true freshmen. FSU, if they can just stay within themselves, don't make dumb mistakes, don't make 13 to 20 penalties in the game offensively, they should be able to consistently move that football and score a lot of points against this defense.
I think you're going to have to go ahead and count on 13 to 20 penalties. That's what we do every week, so there's no reason to just dismiss that's not going to happen. But they do overcome it. They do score in spite of it. It is a minor miracle in that.
Not in the first quarter
alone.
or two. I mean, they need to be able to do that at the beginning, score from the beginning. Then you score 50. Is that the race to 50 here? Is that what we're talking about?
I think it is the race to 50, actually. Okay. If Florida State's going to win it, and I'm not even kidding, right? 40-something, somewhere in there?
Yeah, at least 40-something.
Is it doable? It is doable. I mean, there is a measure of hope there. And we'll talk about how important this game is, maybe for Florida State, not only as a program currently, but the rest of this season on into next year when we come back next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report, and don't forget to visit the website, Warchant.com, the game day page, to find out other locations with which you can watch this game all around the country. For Florida State, I guess you could ask the question, how important is this game to the program as a whole? It's a rivalry game, so it's always very, very important. But if Florida State is somehow able to extend the streak, the win streak, which has been going on forever now, and continue Miami's misery, I guess could it impact not only the way the program looks this year, the rest of the season, but also Mark Richt's efforts to revive the Miami program?
Well, sure. First of all, you got the state championship, and I know we did a poll one time, and I think most FSU fans rate that higher than the ACC championship. So, and it's important for a lot of these kids being in the state. It is a very viable thing. So that is still out there. There's that 6-game winning streak, and I think, like you said, this is almost more important for Miami really than FSU in terms of the future, because Mark Richt, we know he's a likable guy. I think down in South Florida, he's doing a better job making those contacts with the high schools. But he still has to have that legitimacy right now, because Miami's been down so much. They lose to FSU every year. If he loses to FSU again, he's going to lose some of that legitimacy, and FSU has owned South Florida recruiting. I think that will continue unless he does that. And also, a loss here would put you at 0-3 in the ACC, and that's only happened once in the history of the program. You know when that was, Jeff? Probably your favorite year.
I don't want to talk about those years. Man.
2009.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's happened one other time in the history of Florida State, so that you want to avoid that as well.
Yeah, we've been doing way too many comparisons to 2009 lately.
A common theme.
Yeah, when he said that, I was like, oh, we're not doing that again. We're not going to that. But I actually kind of like that 2009 team more than I like this one right now.
It's a huge game for Florida State. I think even in the short term. I mean, the long term is the long term. I don't know how much any one game impacts the long term, but this is a big game for the short term. This is a chance for Florida State. They got to play with heart and pride and all those things Jimbo Fisher talked about on Monday, because you're not in the ACC championship race anymore. You're not in the college football playoff race anymore. And here's your arch rival. If you can't get up for them, I mean, we're going to know what this team is, what the possibilities are for this team the rest of the season by how they play Saturday. If they don't play as hard as they can and give great effort, I don't know, there's going to be breakdowns, there's going to be problems, but if they don't give tremendous effort, this second half of the season could be a disaster.
Well, Ira, you said one game doesn't, but I mean, in this situation, you go down there in front of all those recruits when they've got the momentum going, Mark Richt, and you get boat raced down there, and the perception is this program's on the decline and Miami's on the rise. I think this one game has a lot more impact on the long term than a normal FSU-Miami game would.
Well, and not only that, if they're not able to give effort in a game against their arch rivals, well, what's your floor? Yeah. At some point, you begin to discuss the possibility that you could lose to anybody.
You might not make a bowl.
Syracuse, you could lose to these terrible. I'm sorry, Syracuse, but you could lose to these teams on your schedule that you couldn't have fathomed losing to, because you can't make stops, and if you can't make stops, then you can lose to anybody. We know that, and if you don't care, well, then you can really lose the rest of your games.
And I'm
not saying that would happen.
We'll know that. I mean, if you're not going to care for this game, then you're not going to care for any.
You're just not going to care. I mean, at that point, good Lord, that would be devastating. When we come back, it's time to make some picks, some good games around the country, including, I think, an interesting game in Virginia Tech, North Carolina. We'll do that next. Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. Let's take a look around the country. We'll also get to some keys to victory. Actually, let's do keys to victory first. Tackle somebody, make the occasional stop like once or twice in a game. You go ahead.
You took me on my first one. I do that every segment. I think I've done it the last 3 weeks. I say number one key to victory, tackle.
I'll tell you what, I'll do one different. You're right. How about try? Try. Yeah. Try.
Tackle, try.
So effort, fundamentals, tackles, yeah.
Well, I do think, I'll say, besides just tackling, I think you need to see what Dalvin Cook usually does against Miami. You need to have that again. I think if he rushes for 200 yards, that would help you a lot. Sure, yeah. And I'd say the one other thing, don't fall way behind. You've seen that thing. If you can actually stay within the game in the first half, I think the pressure in this game is on Miami. It's not on Florida State. They're the team that's favored. They're in the top 10.
They're at home.
If they start that game gets close, and on the end they're going to be like, oh no, here we go again. So I mean, if you can stay close within the game early, I think you got a shot.
I think that's a big. Think about the game, the last trip to Miami a couple of years ago when Florida State got behind. But once they came back and once they got within striking distance,
here we go again.
The crowd was just done.
I was at that game. I was sitting on the 50. I went to use the restroom at halftime and to listen to the Miami fans talk about a game they were leading at halftime as if they were losing.
Yeah.
You could feel that weight of the streak. Yeah.
I think if you can get the crowd out of the game, the crowd's looking for an opportunity to give up on that team. That's what Miami fans do. But if they get a lead,
Even Ira's jumping in on that.
but if they do play well and if they get a lead, that's going to be a tough place to
there's
play.
blood in the water. I mean,
Yeah,
this could be a feeding frenzy. And a lot of times when profoundly long streaks with one rival over another, in this case Florida State handing it to Miami for seemingly decades, at that point when they get an opportunity to snap a streak like that, it usually is pretty lopsided. So we'll see. Florida State's got to keep it close. I think you're right. Georgia Tech at Pitt. Gentlemen, Pitt's favored by 6.5. I'm going to take Pitt.
I'm going with Pitt as well. I think Paul Johnson, this may be the end of the road
What?
for the Yellow Jackets.
No. He'll be on the hot seat next year, and then he'll win 10 games.
Yeah, didn't they just give him a
This season's it, buddy.
Gene, who you got?
I'm with you guys. I'm going to go with Pitt. I think they're a much better team right
This
now.
may
than Georgia
surprise
Tech.
you. I'm going to take Virginia Tech getting 2.5 against North Carolina on the road.
It's not a bad pick because the hangover factor. We've seen time and time again when these teams have these big emotional wins against Florida State, they go in the tank the next week. But in my opinion, I think Virginia Tech's improving. They're a better team, but I still think North Carolina, unless they're completely hungover, they're still a much better team at this point.
I don't want the points, don't need the points. I got them winning it outright.
I'm with Virginia Tech as well. I think North Carolina is a nice team. I don't know if they're ready to do this 2 weeks in a row.
Oklahoma's giving 10 points to Texas now. Ordinarily, we might just take Oklahoma and run, but of course, last year Texas, who finished the year sub 500, didn't make a bowl, but beat Oklahoma. So it's kind of interesting. This Oklahoma team's reeling. They got to get right. You know what? Not because I want Oklahoma to win, which I do. I'm giving the 10. I think they trounce Texas, and I think Charlie's in deep trouble.
I don't like double-digit. I think Oklahoma wins the game. That's just too many points in a rivalry. Texas has got the better of them. It's only 2 years in a row, isn't it?
I think it's just
Just
one.
this last year,
one.
okay.
Just
But
last
I don't know.
year.
They've been up and down on that. I know you're defensive there, Jeff. But no, I think Oklahoma wins, but not by 10. So give me those points.
I'm with Gene. I'm taking the points in Texas. I don't think Oklahoma's good enough to lay that many points on the road. Plus, well, not on the road,
It's not on the road.
not on the road. But I don't think they're good enough to lay that many points. Plus, playing for Charlie, man. They're playing for Charlie.
They like Charlie.
All right, I'll be bold again. I think Oklahoma by 20 or more. All right, Tennessee's at Texas A&M, and that is a whale of a game.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I like A&M to win the game, but I cannot give up 7 points to Tennessee. A&M's offense is dreadful. Their defense is very good. Tennessee's got to be spent emotionally. Give me A&M to win the game, but I'm not giving up the 7.
Can I just call it push? I mean, I think that's about right. I like that 7 point right there. Yep. I just think Tennessee's time is up. I think they're going to lose this game. They've been living on the edge too long. They've been getting too lucky. It's going to pop on Saturday.
You got
One more week with the Vols. I'm sticking with you. One more week, Vols.
to win it? Or just to cover?
To cover.
Oh, so you didn't care that much. LSU in Florida, this should be a battle of inept offenses that
3-2.
boggle the mind. I don't know. This is...
The line is 1. I guess they couldn't get away with it.
And the over-under is 3.
Even.
So I will go. So that'll tell you everything you need to know. I'm going to, I don't know. I'm going to go LSU.
You got Ryan laughing back there behind the camera.
I'm going to go LSU.
Usually
I go
get that.
LSU. What do you
I'm going
got?
to take LSU as well.
Yeah.
I hate to do it. Yeah, no, I got LSU circled. I guess I'm going with them. I don't
You
know.
weren't sure. You didn't
I
know.
changed my mind
You
back
can't
and forth.
figure
I'm
it
like
out.
3-2.
Stop.
It's another push. So
Safe to say we will not be betting this game in our real lives, all right? Just the ones we play on TV. Now we get to the game. Gene never has a problem picking against Florida State. I mean, he's had his no card pulled numerous times, so go ahead and take
and I was right the last time I picked them to lose. I didn't pick them last week though to lose.
What do you got here?
I'm a little crazy. I'm going with Florida State in this one. I'm going to pick 38-37, winning field goal at the end. This time it doesn't go wide or left or right. It goes right down the middle. FSU breaks the hearts down in Miami.
Well, we've made a bunch of kicks against Miami, but Ricky sure didn't make.
I just think if they're ever going to get up for a game, this is it. They have to get up. Now, so they're going to hold them down to 37 points.
Well, it's
Big
funny.
defensive stand.
I went back and forth. I've been waffling. I had Miami 38, Florida State 35.
Yeah.
And partly because I think Aguayo misses 2 kicks and costs us the game.
So okay.
Jeff is down on the Aguayo family.
Aguayo.
You're just mad because his older brother is costing the Bucks.
There's some
Well, he did
residual.
miss 3 field goals last week against North Carolina. So Ricky didn't do us any favors.
I'm going with the Canes. I think Miami's going to win 35-31.
See, we all think it's close. We all think it's high scoring.
Yeah.
We all think it's right there. So it could be either way, right?
Yeah, it could be either way. I just think I like Florida State's offense and the way it's been playing, but I don't know if they're going to play. The offensive line's going to play this well against some men up front that Miami has. They've got some bigger, stronger guys than the last couple of weeks they've faced. So I don't think the offense is going to be quite as productive, especially on the road.
You know, you almost feel like it's the last stand. I mean, if Florida State doesn't play well, I mean, you could lose, and it's not ideal. Miami is favored. But if they don't play well, if we continue to just see guys streaking down the field wide open and effort isn't there, really, the show next week is going to be hard to do. I mean, and we'll do it, and we'll talk about it honestly and do the best we can. But frankly, if they can't give effort in this game, you're talking about a devastating season.
We're going to talk about what's the attendance going to be like for these games.
Wake Forest.
If teams are giving,
Wake Forest.
if they show they give up in this game and tank it, and you go against Wakeman, that thing's going to be a
People
ghost
are
town.
angry. I mean, Gene,
Yeah.
I know your boards reveal that, and my inbox and Twitter feed. People are very mad, and I think it's true. It's one thing to not be good enough, but to try your hardest. But it's a whole nother just to loaf and to give no efforts. It's really hard to fathom. All right, for Gene Williams and Ira Schoffel, I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, to the Warchant.com report. We'll be back with you next week.